Hello, George. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? What is your name? I'm sorry. It just says the sideshow. Are
My
you
name is
Artie?
Yes.
Nice to meet you, Artie.
So nice to
Am
meet
I
you.
am I pronouncing it right?
Yes.
Yes, good, good. And where are you?
I'm currently in San Francisco.
Oh, okay. Lucky you.
It's been raining quite a bit this
Oh
week.
yeah, I've heard. My business associate is in Mill Valley, but she complains about the rain.
Yeah.
So I hear we have a lot of people.
Yeah, we're just waiting for them to join.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm always kind of early. I can't help it. It's an old thing. Yeah. So how are the other sessions?
I think this is the first session of the week.
Oh, okay. Okay. But in previous weeks, how's it been going, Creative Week?
Uh,
Oh, is this the first set? Is this the first
first
day?
session. Yes, this is
Oh,
the first.
because I thought Terrace and Jeff Greenspan went.
Oh no, I think that's on Wednesday.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
For some
Yeah.
reason I thought they went already. Okay. Okay. Okay, good. So are you in the business, Archie?
So I'm actually a recent graduate. I'm an art director, and I just graduated from Miami Art School recently.
Okay. And are you interning now?
I'm currently not, but I am looking for a junior art direction
Okay.
role currently. Yes.
Okay, good. Good. Well, maybe Deborah will hire you. Oh, there's Andrea. Andrea and I used to work together. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, George. How are you?
I hope you're expensing this. Because it's really not going to be worth it.
I've got a job number to bill it to. Don't worry.
Good. That's all that matters to me.
Yeah, it is. How are you?
I'm good. It was nice to get your notes the other night.
Oh my God, I passed that silly thing and it just made me laugh, and I knew you would laugh too. So
I was going to send you a note back. I heard, like, I guess we call them dad jokes now. I heard about this lab that crossed a pig with a centipede, and they got bacon and legs.
Oh, but
Yeah, well, it goes along with your lox and bagel.
it totally does. It totally does. I love that. Keep your bagels safe. Put locks on them. And the kids are so used to me. Like if I see a something funny like that in a window, I'm like, I have to stop and take a picture.
Yeah, you have to.
You have to. You have to. Although my favorite was the headline on the back of a some meat. I think this was a butcher on Long Island, and their tagline was "Meats with your approval."
Oh, okay. Because there's a fish store here in the city called Meat Without Feet.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah.
That I've seen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I loved meats with your approval.
Ah.
Like part of me is like, it's either really good copywriting or my mother is writing this stuff.
I used to work for this guy. It's one of my stories is about him tonight. I used to work with this guy, and if you ever did something that was vaguely in that area, and we all fall prey now and again, he used to bring out, there's a locksmith in the city called Monkeys, and the keys is all capitalized. Have you seen them? You can look it up online.
I have not.
It's called
Okay.
Monkeys, and they say, like, we don't monkey around. And then, okay, you get it. We all do it on occasion.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with a good pun.
I feel bad because I know some of the people on the phone, and I'm talking to Andrea, but hi, Leslie. I don't know Jim and Steven, but hi, boys.
Hi, George. Nice to see you.
Nice to
How you
see
doing?
you. Good. Hopefully my partner in crime will be on soon.
Oh, I have no doubt she will.
Oh, there she is.
Oh, there she is.
Sam Reinstein and Robin Sands, all these people I know. My God.
It's almost like you put a, you put a notice out about something you and Debra are doing and your friends show up. It's crazy.
You know, I'm in.
Okay.
I used to be in advertising.
Wasn't that fun?
So I guess, RT, you're in charge, right? So I'm going to shut up for a couple minutes. That'll be uncharacteristic.
I would like to welcome everybody to a very dicey topic that's going to be discussed today, which is ageism in advertising. With us today, we have George and Debra. George is the founder of George Co. It's a company from Delaware, and he's also the founder of Ageism. And we have with us here Debra Fright, who is an ECD at Ogilvy. And I'll pass on the floor to them.
Yeah, I'm just going to say a couple of things to open up. Just thank you all for having us and for coming. And from what they tell me, we've raised over $700,000 for children in sub-Saharan Africa, and I think that's great. It's up to 800 now. No, so thank you for having us. Us old people, and I just like in terms of format. There's a little disclaimer. Debra and I are writers, and like a lot of writers, we're shy writers, if that's not redundant, and we're writerly writers. We really care about precise words. So we're going to, as we promised, we're going to tell you stories tonight about aging. We're not going to do a PowerPoint. There's not going to be any lists on how to keep decrepitude at bay. But we're literally going to tell stories about aging, and we're going to read. We're going to read because, like George Burns used to hide behind his cigar, we're going to hide behind paper because we're better off that way until you really get to know us, and then we can hold court. Maybe that'll be next time. So we're going to read a few stories. They're going to be short about things that have happened to us along the way, or maybe things that we've seen or learned. The only one kind of protocol caveat, and it's because I know our industry can be very sensitive sometimes. The only caveat is this: I'm independent now, which is, I guess, a nice way of saying I've already pissed off everyone I can piss off. But Debra still works for a big agency. So if anyone says something like, death to the holding companies or something, even if you think Debra says it, it's me who said it. So blame it on me, blame everything on me, because we have to be a little, is that right, Debra? We have to be a little politic.
Yes.
I'll probably be the more refractory one anyway, but we're going to tell 6 stories. We're going to alternate between me and Debra. There's going to be a small intermezzo throughout, and then we're going to share a one-act play that I wrote, believe it or not, about aging. Debra's going to take a role, and I'm going to take a role, and we're going to do that as hopefully the funny conclusion. And that's it. Any questions? And the only other thing is, hopefully we can blaze through these stories, not because they're boring, but because we've tried to time things. So if there are any questions or any thoughts or any comments about aging or any fears, maybe we have a little time to talk about them at the end. Is that all right? Okay, I'm putting my glasses on. I'm serious now. So I'm going to read first, and then Debra's going to read, and then we'll go on from there.
Hey,
Okay.
George, before you start, George, I just want to thank you for inviting me, because it was really George who was invited. I'm a +1, and I really appreciate you asking me to join this this conversation. And I should also confess that I had to be dragged in kicking and screaming. George has put up with my whining about being nervous about doing this, and also about my reticence to talk about age in this kind of a forum. And I think really maybe the fact that I am reticent to talk about it, and this is kind of a complicated subject for me, is testament to the fact that aging is different for everybody, and it's also probably quite different for men than it is for women when it comes to advertising, and probably any industry there is. So anyway, hi everybody.
Yeah, I'm sorry I left that out. I mean, Deborah and I had lunch a couple of weeks ago with another person of vintage, and we were just chatting. And I said, my God, you know, women have such a different perspective. And I've worked with a lot of women in my time, and I'm married to a creative director who allegedly colors her hair, whereas I don't. And I realized like the sensitivity about age is so different. I said it would be great to have a point of view that's different from mine. So I think hopefully that's it for prelims and stuff. That's, our stories are serious, but hopefully they're not too serious. So this first one I'm going to call a confession about fruit. And it's a true story. It happened to me when I was a kid. I was 32 or 30. I went to work for the 1980s agency of the decade, Alley and Gargano. Unfortunately, I began when their salad days were over in 1990. I was young then, and the halls were lined with trophies and gentlemen, and they were all gentlemen in their 50s who were lions of the industry. Down one corner was Hall of Famer Emil Gargano. Down in the other corner was another Hall of Famer, Mike Tesh. Along the hallways, the offices were inhabited by a who's who of 80s awards annuals and 70s awards annuals. Barry Greenspan, who wrote Because So Much Is Riding on Our Tires for Michelin. George Uringer, who did great work for Saab that really built the brand in the United States. Tom Wolsey, who, if you look him up, he did great work about nesting instincts for Karasan carpets with Helene Spivak. I worked for a corner office called Ed Butler, who was probably 30 years older than I. And Ed was a great writer. By his own calculus and photographic advertising memory, while he was at DDB during the glory days, he wrote the 21st best Volkswagen ad ever written. And while at Backer and Spielvogel, he wrote some of the funniest Miller Lite ads. Along the way, Ed loved the way I wrote. I got lucky. And about 6 months into our time together, he turned to me and he said, "You don't have to show me copy anymore. I trust you," which is a behavior I can't even imagine in today's day and age. But here's where the story gets to be about aging. I was born kind of fast wired and Ed was born kind of slow. I guess we shared duties on a financial services account. And for about a year, Ed would write about half the ads and I would write the other half. And my goal was always to do work that was up to Ed's standard, so nobody would know which ads were his and which ads were mine. I wanted really to become as good as Ed. I respected him. Things started shifting around after a while. The client began to like my speed more than Ed's cantankerousness. Some of you who know me think I'm cantankerous. I'm like Mary Tyler Moore compared to Betty White, compared to Ed. Anyway, after 18 months, I was writing probably 3 out of every 5 ads. And by the end of our second year together, I was writing probably 3 out of every 4. To be honest with you, I started resenting Ed. He made a lot more money than I did. He had 3 windows, I had 1. And if there were TV spots on the bank account we were working on, they were his. I was doing more work, but playing second fiddle. As time went on and the agency was taking on water, prelude to sinking entirely. Eventually, management, a term you can only in advertising ever use loosely, decided I was the future. I was 33 and they promoted me to senior vice president, creative group head. And they fired Ed, and that sucks. They fired Ed partly because I was a dick or because he was old, and I lived through that. It's like, I think, being a survivor in a car accident where your girlfriend dies. It could have been me. You carry the guilt around. I had lunch with Ed at a Greek diner across from his apartment near the office. I couldn't make eye contact and stared into my turkey burger deluxe. About a week later, I found out Ed had cancer. I saw him fairly often. He'd drop by the office to shoot the shit, or I'd see him at a bagel shop nearby the office. Every time I saw him, he seemed 10 pounds thinner, like he was prepping for the role of as a prisoner on the Bataan Death March. Ed died about a year and a half after he was fired. Of course, I wasn't to blame, but I had done something wrong just the same. I didn't understand Ed, what he had done, how he had helped me, how good he was, and all he had accomplished. I did what people do sometimes, not out of meanness or spite or evil, out of ignorance or speed or the desire to be a big cheese. Old people have always been the other. They're in the way of young people who want to get to where the old people are. As Willie Loman said, though, in Death of a Salesman, you can't eat the orange and throw away the peel. A man is not a piece of fruit. That's what ageism does. It treats people like pieces of fruit. I did it. We all do. We eat the orange. We throw the peel away. I'm sorry, Ed. I've been apologizing to Ed since 1994. That's number one. Hopefully no one left.
I'm still here, George. And my first story is called A Time I Laughed When I Wish I Hadn't. About 7 years ago, I sat in a conference room at my agency and found myself feeling dirty and mean and ashamed. I was with the rest of my team and we were laughing about something our client had said. This client, I'll call her Kate, was intellectual, formal, well-spoken, and a little precious. She was given to using phrases like heartbreakingly dear to describe everything from diamond earrings to poppy seed muffins. She critiqued layouts as being just this side of lavish and headlines for being too clever by half. She was usually right and deserved our respect, but she was also fun to imitate. Your hair looks effortlessly elegant today, I'd say to my art director, and he'd answer that it was charming of me to notice. We got to a point where we talked like her more than we talked like ourselves. Between Kate's way of speaking and rather quaint way of dressing, she gave us a lot of fodder, but the thing was, I liked her. She was thoughtful. She cared about writing and craft and showed genuine appreciation for ideas. Most importantly, she was smart and kind-hearted and experienced. The subject of her age came up a lot, and while she was older than me, I quietly suspected it wasn't by that much. One day, we were in a conference room doing our best heartbreakingly dear impersonations when someone asked about a meeting that was supposed to be scheduled. We've been trying to make it happen, the account guy said, but Kate can't make it tomorrow. She has to take her mother to the doctor. Again. Someone groaned and said, oh, I can't with that 100-year-old mother of hers. Another person opined that her mother was probably more like 110 since Kate herself was probably 80, and I simultaneously laughed and hated myself. The feeling wasn't new to me. When I was 12, I started wearing a back brace for scoliosis, and since my mother knew I was self-conscious about entering junior high, she arranged for me to talk to a girl who would be in my new school and who wore the same brace I did. Jamie was nice, and she understood in a way no one else could how it felt to have to wear loose tops and pants when you were dying to wear hip-hugger jeans and danskins. She knew the pain of being enveloped in plaster and metal when the rest of the girls in your grade were showing off the fact that they'd graduated from AA to A cups. Jamie and I talked on the phone a few times that summer. But when school started and she found me in the cafeteria, I looked away. I responded to her huge waves with perfunctory nods, to her invitations to come over after school with excuses about homework until finally she stopped trying. I felt badly about it, but more strongly than that was the conviction that I didn't want to be one of the two brace girls. It wasn't great being a brace girl all on my own, but I could hide more easily that way. Alliance with another would have branded me. So I turned my back on someone who needed compassion and empathy, and in trying to deny who I was, deprived myself of those very things. So as I sat in that conference room and laughed about the 100-year-old mother, my shame was all too familiar. I wanted to say what's so funny about having an older mother, but I didn't, because if I had, it would have been clear to everyone that I was talking about my own mother too. And I didn't want to be a Kate. So I let her age be the punchline to a joke that was really about me too. There are lots of things I regret having done or not done over the years. A bad call on which campaign to recommend, or a nervous mistake during a pitch meeting. I regret not having spent more time at drop off when my kids were little, putting my hand up for projects I didn't have time for, and not putting it up for some I deserved to work on. But of all my regrets, that laugh that day makes me feel the worst, because Kate deserved better. We all deserve better.
Clap, clap, clap. That was wonderful. So we're having a little intermezzo now. About before the election, when people were graduating virtually, Sherrod Brown, who's the senior senator from Ohio, wrote a speech to the young generation and about their future and what they can do. And I read it and I was moved. And I thought, gee whiz, if the ad industry had any real leadership, one of the somebody in some holding company might write something like this. So I called it the generation that will change advertising. It's not really about aging, but it's about looking forward, which aging is about somehow. So I'll just read this. It's not too terribly long. Imagine now that I'm a rumpled senator from Ohio. And this is to the generation that will change advertising. Today's graduates have a rare chance to create more than just, fair, and diverse advertising. Let me start again. Today's graduates have a rare chance to create a more just, fair, and diverse advertising industry than the one we had before the coronavirus. The old folks in advertising, that's us, may brag to you about the good old days. DDB, Carl Alley, George Lois, and people slightly younger than those old timers may tell you that your generation is apathetic and self-centered. You spend your days and nights on social, have no attention span, and wouldn't know a concept if it hit you in the kishkas. But I know something different. You are the most activist generation in decades. Of course, none of you thought you would enter into this industry the way it is today. The vulture capitalists, the C-suite, have left us with an industry in shambles, in large part because we've forgotten what we do. The pandemic has laid bare our industry's faults and taught us much about ourselves. You now see a business with gaping holes where we should be providing leadership. We have management that knows how to take, but not how to give. We know how to say be loyal, but give neither security or growth in return. We have soaring income and ballooning wealth for the tiny sliver of people at the top, alongside declining opportunity and stagnant wages for the vast middle class and those who aspire to the middle class. Luckily, your generation has never been very good at quietly accepting the hand you've been dealt. Through all the pain and death and shrunken wealth and lost jobs for millions brought on by this pandemic, I see a glimmer of hope, an opportunity for a new start in our industry, brought on by the leadership of your generation. You have a chance to build a new industry out of the failures of this one. You could be recognized as the generation that tackled the existential issue of unbridled capitalism. If you accept that chance, decades from now, American history students will study how the class of 2020 and your brothers and sisters of Generation Z created a fairer, more just, more diverse society than existed before the pandemic. Future generations will learn how you led this great industry and our powerful economy out of the worst recession in 90 years. You did it not with small space ads and small ideas, but through challenging the dominant complacency, fighting timidity and groupthink, battling boredom, and calling out the dangers of safe. You thought big, you fought big, you taught big. It is creativity and accountability and bravery and honesty and fairness that will lead us out of the morass of our current generations have created, and a simple belief that the greatest risk is not taking one, and that failure is a necessary prerequisite for success. Your generation hates the insipid, despises pandering, and wants to treat all people with dignity and respect as intelligent and equal human beings. When we understand that again and make the work we do paramount again, not the pseudoscience or data alchemists, then you will lead our industry back. Don't applaud the concocted can winners and the fake ad finaglers. Don't model your careers after them. Fight for the dignity and integrity of real work that makes a difference to the business of brands, real work that builds companies and wealth, not for some, but for all. Real work for real clients, for real rewards that we as an industry can charge real prices for. That's how we bring this industry back. Take your newly acquired skills to help us remake and rebuild the kind of economy you want with your values of inclusion, fair play, and honesty that your generation always represents. As the Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. admonished us, human progress never rolls in on wheels of inevitability. It's up to us, graduates. It's up to you. Intermezzo. Sorry for the seriousness.
That was some pretty damn gorgeous seriousness, George.
Well, it was Sherrod Brown.
Well, Sherrod.
Yeah.
By way of George. So my next story is called The Gray Area. Our first department Zoom was like a bad cocktail party, but with no cocktails. So a terrible cocktail party. The point of it was to say hi and chat. And while we accomplished the first goal, we were failing at the second. The only saving grace was that this was during the early days of the pandemic, when Zooming was novel and the bar was so low that each new face that popped onto the screen elicited genuine excitement. As the sad cocktail party continued and people began to talk, I realized something. I was a flaming narcissist. I studied my face, manically adjusting the lid of my laptop, and with it, my confidence level. 1 minute, I was Sophia Loren, the next, Phyllis Diller. A friend who was in the same meeting texted, "Is that guy with the beard wearing pajamas?" I smiled, looking down at my phone, and typed back that maybe Hef wasn't dead after all, when I realized with horror that my roots were in dire need of a touch-up and in direct view of my camera lens. I quickly lifted my head lest everyone see that I was way more Phyllis than Sophia. As I shoved a giant dictionary under my computer, it hit me that I had no idea what anybody was talking about. So anyway, we thought we'd just say hi today, said the Zoom leader again. Everyone smiled to more awkward silence. "This is so great, you have no idea," one guy said. "I mean, yesterday I was in this weird credentials meeting." A second guy chimed in, "I was in that too. Oh my God, it was horrible." We leaned in with identical tell me more expressions. "Really, you should have seen it. It was like the two of us, right? With all these really old women, like in their 50s and 60s with gray hair and glasses, and us. And we were like, it's so good to meet you. And the whole time we're texting each other like, what the fuck are we doing here?" The shoulders within the grid squares shook up and down with laughter. One person seemed to find their predicament, the weirdness of having to meet with really old women with gray hair and glasses, funnier than everyone else, because that person laughed hardest and loudest. That person was me. I looked at my face, then into my eyes as my smile froze, understanding all too well why I was laughing. If you're in on the joke, you're not the butt of it, you're just a good sport. I've been a good sport for as long as I can remember. At my first copywriting job, there was a beer account, the best account in the agency, huge budgets, famous work, funny scripts. No one questioned that the team had hardly any women on it. After all, it was beer. But at one point, there was some quick work needed, and my partner and I were invited to join a gangbang. The term gangbang didn't remotely bother me or any of the women I knew. It was just ad talk. Some of us were feminists, but not that kind of feminists. We were good sports. My partner and I worked late and over the weekend. By Monday, we had 5 directions, each with a few scripts. That morning, we paced and practiced. "Should I say in this spot or in this commercial?" I asked. "Say spot, it sounds cooler," she answered. By 11, we heard laughter coming out of a conference room. We peeked in. The walls were tacked up with sheets of paper, scribbled with marker drawings and headlines. the kind of beautiful mess that makes creative people happy and account people nervous. We stood near the door. The head guy noticed us lurking. Hey, we just went over the work. Did you guys have anything? I ran to my office quickly, lest they change their minds, and returned with our stack of boards. Wow, you've been busy, someone said, and we smiled proudly. Finnegan had like one fucking thing, said the head guy, punching Finnegan in the arm. Yeah, but it was killer, Finnegan said without a smile. One guy said, uh-oh, Finn's mad, watch out. Finn finally grinned, meeting our eyes, and said, they're just jealous, in a way that made me understand why everyone treated him with deference. I wanted to say something funny so I could turn his half smile into a full one, but all I could think of was, should we show our stuff now? They said sure, but it seemed clear from the full walls and the way they glanced at their watches that they'd been about to call the meeting quits. We presented the first idea to silence. Should we keep going? My partner asked. Yeah, go for it, Finn said, but clearly he was bored. We shared the second idea, and when we got to the end, after a beat of silence that made me cross my arms and hug my elbows, Finn said, that's actually kind of funny. It's actually not bad, said another. You know what? It's actually pretty good, said the head guy. You guys are actually sort of funny. He held his hand out and I gave him the storyboard. He pinned it to the wall. Good job, girls, he said, then held his hand up and said, oops, and then he lowered his voice to a mock serious tone. Good job, women, which made everyone, including us, especially us, laugh and laugh and laugh. But my laughter felt hollow because we had worked twice as hard to get half as much credit. And while that wasn't exactly funny, it was, as Finn said, killer. To be clear, I can't bear people who don't know how to laugh at themselves, but there's a difference between laughing good-naturedly and laughing when nothing's funny, between laughing so hard your cheeks hurt and laughing so hard your soul hurts. And seeing myself do just that in a little square on a screen during the early days of the pandemic forced me to realize that being a good sport comes with a price tag, and I'm starting to go broke.
So one more from me, and then one more from Deb, and then we have Debra, and then we have one together. So we're getting there, guys. This is called My Retirement Party. Back in February of 2019, I was already 61, and I had asked off the account I was working on. I had had enough after about 12 years, and around August, about 6 months later, they finally let me off, I guess for bad behavior. You know what I hated in agency life when I was in agency life? I hated being called dude. I guess people do it because it makes them seem California cool. What's more, they don't have to remember anyone's name. But when you're 61, you don't want to be called the same thing you'd call a 13-year-old stoner. A lot of times when I'm working out on my treadmill, I watch old heavyweight championship fights. They're usually about the length of a workout, and they're a slice of history. They pass the time. Not long ago, I saw the first of the 3 Ali Frazier fights. Ali was 29 then and had a record of 31 wins and no losses with 25 knockouts. If you're not a fight fan, that's good. He had already been in jail for refusing to serve in Vietnam. Frazier was 27. He was 26 wins against no losses and 23 knockouts. The fight announcer referred to 2 of the greatest boxers in boxing history as boys. Later, I watched 36-year-old Joe Louis come out of retirement and lose his title to 29-year-old Ezra Charles. Louis had defended his title more than anyone else in history. Many people regard him as the greatest fighter ever. The announcer called he and Charles boys. That's roughly how I feel about the word dude. I'm not a dude. I have 40 years of experience, a paid for mortgage, multi-million-dollar accounts rely on me. I'm not a dude. They called me dude at that agency, and I complained about it, and they said I was being sensitive. Before asking off the account, I won't mention my name, I had a target on my back. Fewer than 1 person in 100 in that holding company was over 60. I found that data out, by the way, in their annual report. But once I was accountless, I didn't have a target anymore. I had a day-glow fluorescent flashing target, and I could sense that any day I'd be fired. Then I had a brainstorm. I went to a 99-cent store and bought 25 retirement cards, the cheesiest ones I could find. I had friends sign a few of them, but most of them I filled in myself, wishing myself luck on the road ahead, that sort of thing. Then I hung them up like people do in offices when they're engaged or on someone's birthday. I even strung a rope over my desk and arrayed the cards on the rope. My workspace was not only ostentatious, it looked authentically like I had had a retirement party. And any day now, I would sink into the sea like the sun. My logic told me this was a good idea, that some faceless HR person would make their way to my desk and fire me. HR never walks the floors to see how people are doing. They only walk the floors to bring death. In my imagination, they'd sneak up to do the job, furtive like a cat burglar. Then they'd see the cards, see that I was on the cusp of retiring, and then they'd do the math. George is about to announce his retirement. His friends have already thrown him a party. If we hold off firing him till he leaves on his own, we can save thousands of dollars on severance. Words can and often do mean something different to the hearer than they mean to the speaker. You have to be thoughtful with words. Even innocuous ones can be weighted with centuries of evil and cruelty and social order and racism or ageism. It's not unusual since being corporately kicked to the curb by a holding company that fires people over 60 at 600 times the rate that their proportion in the company would indicate for people to remark that I'm angry. You're damn fucking right, I'm angry. For 15 years, I received no raises. For 15 years, it was assumed that the gray of my sideburns meant that my ambition, intelligence, contemporariness had been pushed out by those very follicles. For most of those 15 years, I was handed the steamiest of steamy piles of shit in the agency, soothing a troubled CEO with a speech or a manifesto, handling a particularly gnarly commercial or pitch, or a client video. Worst of all, to someone who made his living from being attuned to language was the language. Well, you're just riding it out, I would hear. Well, you get tired at the end of the day. And worst of all, people 2 decades younger than I, but above me, calling me dude. Dude, I really need you to do this. Dude, can you work over Christmas break? I'm tired of this whole ageism thing, sick and tired. If people don't value you because you were born when Eisenhower was president, or Nixon, or even Reagan, or the first Bush, well, then I have a word for them. They're bigots. And another, they're small-minded. And a few more. I told you I was angry. They're exclusionary mofos who can take their diversity and inclusion bludgeon, the one they're always spouting about, and they can beat themselves up their tattooed asses with it. I'm angry about being treated as a 9th-class citizen because I have some rings around my trunk. Someone sent me a note not long ago, a friend and an age peer working at what she describes as a viciously ageist agency. George, she said, I had a dream that one day there will be an agency where my partner and our teams will be judged not by the years on our resumes, but by the content of our work. I think that's pretty good and pretty relevant. But I have a confession. No one sent me those words in real life. I took Dr. Martin Luther King's speech, I Have a Dream, and I did a little rewrite. You know, this one. I have a dream that one day my 4 little children will live in a nation where they won't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So back to my faux retirement party. I can't say for sure that this prolonged my time at Ogilvy, but it was a good joke to leave on. Eventually they moved me to another account, but more eventually they fired my ass. Dude, that really sucked. Thank you.
That was some righteous anger.
I'm good at anger.
I was about to say that was some righteous anger, dude, just to be funny. Then I got like scared. Wow, George. So my last one is called Daydream Believer. When you have a baby, you give birth to not only your child, but a world of insecurity. At least that was true of me when I had my kids. I was sure that I was the most inept mother ever to snap on a onesie. And when it came to returning to work, I was even less confident about how things would go. For one thing, I wondered how I'd handle the pressure. And for another, I worried that I'd never work on anything good again, because part of getting great assignments is being seen, hanging out. And I'd always been good at hanging out. I loved going for a drink at the end of a long day, almost as much as I liked playing ping pong while pretending to be working. But suddenly I had twin babies and a husband who needed me, not to mention a caregiver who needed car fare home when I was late. So I became one of those women who leave on time, those women who put their heads down and work when everyone else is hanging out, because unlike everyone else, they have a 6:15 curfew. I became one of those women I never wanted to be, because they weren't edgy, they were steady. I was afraid I'd never work on a good account again. And worse than that, that I'd become, oh, sorry. And worse than that, that I become that most awful of things, irrelevant. As if to prove my concerns correct, the first thing I was asked to work on after maternity leave was Huggies. The assignment was to do a print ad for a newborn diaper. I did it as a long copy piece, a love letter from a pregnant woman to a sonogram, which was signed from someone who already loves you so much it hurts. My creative director loved it, clients loved it, I loved it, and I never could have written it when I was a ping pong playing drinking buddy. I worked on some other packaged goods accounts after that, one of them Hellman's. My partner Jackie and I won that account, and while it's a well-known brand and a good one, it put me exactly where I'd been afraid of landing, the kitchen. And yet I loved that too, because as my kids got old enough to go to school, I started to understand what it is to make lunches with your laptop on the counter, squinting to read emails, then pecking out an answer with one finger as you use another to flick a Cheerio off your son's forehead. Being a working mother is hard, and I was now able to relate to a consumer I hadn't had a clue about before I became one. That work on Unilever opened the door to Dove, and I was lucky enough to work on the original campaign for Real Beauty. I could never have imagined that becoming a mother, the very thing I was sure would put an end to my career, would shift it into another and better gear. I have a friend my age who moved to a city upstate and started a second career a few years ago. She's very successful, as are her new friends up there, all of whom did the same thing she did. Last summer, when I visited her, we went to a town beach at sunset to hang out with her new friends. We drank wine and ate big green olives and talked. Unlike me, they all worked for themselves and most had let their hair go gray. At one point, my friend sat onto her beach chair and it tipped over, toppling her backward. In her younger days, when she was very buttoned up, she would have been embarrassed, maybe gotten mad at the stupid chair for landing her with her head in the sand and her butt in the air. But instead, she got to her feet, shook the sound off, and laughed with abandon, as did her friends and me. But they were different than I was. They had graduated to a new place. They didn't care if anyone was looking or if anyone didn't approve. They fully embraced who they were, and every one of them looked more comfortable and seemed cooler and happier than I felt, realizing that unlike them, I had people I needed to impress, people who could decide that my expiration date had arrived and that, like a carton of milk gone sour, I needed to be taken out. So while my friend shakes her gray hair free of sand and laughs at her crummy beach chair, I sit up straight in mine and suck my tummy in. But I realized, of course, that embracing what makes you different is what defines your worth. I like to think there's a world where, just as I found my footing by tapping into the genuine emotion that comes with wrapping a tiny diaper around a tiny body, I can make some new footsteps. And maybe, just maybe, I can feel free to do the most interesting work of my life, because being older is nothing if not liberating. So here I am, ready to stop lying about my age and start bragging about it. I'm scared that people will make fun of me the way they made fun of my client, scared I'll be seen as unattractive or irrelevant. I feel vulnerable about doing something that for many is easy, but for me is not. I'd like to stop apologizing for having the nerve to have been born when I was and start feeling lucky that I was brought up during a time when social media didn't exist and kids had the luxury of privacy and the privilege of staring not at a screen, but up at the sky as they engaged in the lost art of daydreaming. When I was a kid, I was, like my first true love, Davy Jones, a daydream believer. And sometimes when I daydreamed, I imagined that when I grew up, I might work in journalism or advertising. and I assumed that the older and more experienced I became, the more successful and respected I'd be. I like to think I was right about that. I'd like to prove myself right about that. And I'd love to think I belong to an industry that will let me. You guys are so nice to clap like that. I'm going to do that from now on. I didn't even ever, I never think of doing that when people do stuff that I like. But thank you for doing it for me, because you taught me a nice thing to do for others.
So with that niceness from Debra in mind, we're going to ask you to come back to the early 17th century, and Debra and I are going to perform for the first time ever what I'm calling a play on 2 pages. It's called Old's Well That Ends Well, and it's a dialogue. Debra's going to play the theater owner, the producer, the money person, and I'm going to play the very needy agent of William Shakespeare. So we've never done this before, so take it easy on us. And we're going to do this with real natural accents too. I meet Debra, the owner, on Ye Old Street, and I say, "Hello, ye old friend. I representeth the Bard."
The Bard? Is that doth liketh the Bard and Grill? There be a Applebee's just down the boulevard.
Odds bodkins, me lord, the Bard, the greatest playwright in our mother tongue, William Shakespeare.
Pish posh, what doth I want with yesterday's porridge?
Methinks ye demur with overabundant haste, dear friend. He hath some 20 smasheth hits at the Globe Theatre, In the Round, Hamlet, Macbeth, King Lear.
That 'twas in the long ago. He harketh backeth to the 1580s. What hath he doneeth lately?
Verily, he is but a sprig of a man. How ill white hairs become a fool.
Speaketh English, dammit, damn your eyes. Is this play the thing?
It is most honestly the thing. The Bard calleth it the Tempest. Storms, magic, fairies, and more. 'Tis his final opus.
Can it not he giveth me something like Cats or Hamilton?
My lord, Hamilton won't e'en be born for nigh 2 centuries. Methink writing such as impossible. Methinks such writing as impossible as obtaining a kingdom for a horse.
Me taketh a flyer on your board, as it were.
'Tis your decision, me lord, but this above all, to thine own self be true, and it must follow as day the night. Thou canst not be false to any man.
Yeah, whatevs.
The curtain falls. And that's it for us.
Woo! Wow. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming to listen to us read what we put on pieces of paper.
Hopefully that was fun. And if you have questions about walkers or arthritis medicine or anything, just let us know.
We love you guys. That was great.
Allison, thank you. Love you too, Allison.
Thank you.
Way to go, Debra Winger.
Thank you. That was fabulous. Thank you, guys.
Oh,
Oh,
it's
yeah,
our
thanks
pleasure.
so
Bravo,
much.
bravo.
It was
Yeah,
it was
great.
it was fun. It was fun for us. And Debra sent, I'll confess, Debra sent something very lovely to me the other night about Bruce Springsteen and Obama. If I can put you on the spot, Debra.
Yeah. You want me to say it?
Yeah, it was
Sure.
touching. Yeah.
No, I was telling George that I saw this thing on TV about a podcast series that Bruce Springsteen is doing with Barack Obama, and one of them, I think Barack Obama said, he said, you know, it's just so special to make a friend when you're older. It's not that often that you do, and it's really really precious. And I told George that I felt that way about my friendship with him. it really feels like a gift to me. And it's funny, George and I have known each other for 1,000 years because as we've now made clear, we're both 1,000 years old. And we really never, we barely talked. I think we had one cup of coffee together in all the times that we worked, in all the years that we worked together. And George, I think, put it really well in saying that because we're both writers and both most comfortable behind a keyboard, that's how we tend to communicate with most people. And so we've only fairly recently started talking, and George has been incredibly generous, both in inviting me here today with him and in publishing some of the things that I've written on his very well-read blog page. So yeah, I meant that about it being a gift, George.
It's been really, I mean, for me, the thing that most people forget about getting older is, well, it's twofold. For me, I'm just as ambitious as I was when I was 21 or 18. That's number one. I didn't like give up because I got old. And by ambitious, I mean avid about learning too, and still wanting to do big assignments. And then, you know, I guess number two is what Debra just said. It's like meeting new people, doing new things, finding things that give you more meaning, because the things that give you meaning as you're growing up, you know, buying a house, finding a mate, raising children, stuff like that. Well, those things are kind of, you know, you kind of dusted those things off. You kind of done those things. So you're looking for meaning in other ways. And, you know, a lot of times it comes from the people you meet, the people you work with, what you're learning about yourself, and what you're doing. And it's challenging, but very fulfilling. I'll say that. You know, in this, like, because I reinvented myself when I got fired from Ogilvy at 62. And because I didn't have a job, I didn't have a, you know, for a man not to have a business card is a big deal, because that's your identity for your whole, for 2/3 of your life. And all of a sudden, I don't know, I'm just some guy with a keyboard, some Mac. So I thank Debra too for giving me some confidence to do this kind of thing. And the sideshow people, of course.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I think like one thing I was really hesitant about in terms of doing this was that I didn't want to be, I didn't want to come across like, I mean, I think George talked about the fact that we've got different levels of anger and different ways of feeling about the place where I work and the place where George used to work. But I really think that one of the things that I kind of came to in thinking about writing these things, and that I think, you know, George expressed so beautifully in his first piece, is that it's something we all do. It's just like any casualism that any of us partake in. I mean, I didn't think that the people who talked about the gray-haired ladies that they had to have a Zoom with, I didn't think they were being mean, and I didn't think they were trying to be anything. It's just like a lot of the stuff that we all think is acceptable because we do it every day. And I think that, you know, if those two guys had said, you know, we were stuck in this meeting with, it was like us and a bunch of Black people, you know, we would all be justifiably and up in arms as well everyone should be. But I think when it comes to age, I think that we've all treated, you know, old people as the punchlines to jokes, and certainly myself included, for so long that I think it's just easy to just kind of keep thinking it's okay. And I think that when, you know, when you get to be a certain age, you start to realize that it's not only is it not okay, but you kind of, you know, I think as we both expressed, regret having had contributed to it for as long as perhaps you have. So I don't know. I think this has been cathartic for, I feel like you've all indulged me in a gigantic therapy session, but
that's life with me. Actually, it's all therapy. Actually, there was, I mean, just to be serious, there was a thing in the Journal on the weekend about more and more people, some of the account people on the phone probably read it, or planners, more and more people finding that the grouping people by generations, like saying there's characteristics behind Gen Z or Gen Y or millennials or whatever, that they act and behave in a certain way is pretty specious. Like you have a cohort of 45 million people. These days, you're going to have 90 million opinions in that cohort and 90 million behaviors. So this idea that, old people are an archetype or are slower or phlegmatic or whatever, is to Debra's point, it's like, it's one of those things I never really understood. You'll hear it on the news all the time. Like we were talking to Marla from the Black community. Like there's no Black community, there's Black people. There's no like aged consensus here. We don't have a group meeting every week and say, what should we talk about now? I think the key is to try to treat people. I actually was just telling someone, speaking of old, I just finished the new book by John le Carré, who just died, but he had a book in his top drawer when he died. His son's also a writer, and he asked his son to be executor of the book to finish the book. And his son wrote this brilliant afterword. And in all the book, I underlined only one thing. It's his son talking about his relationship with his very famous father. And he said, we made space for one another's flaws and we had fun. And I got, God, that's like all you can really expect in life. And I just sent it to Steve Simpson, my ex-boss. Like, what more can you say about being an ECD or a CD or a group head or a husband or a wife or a boyfriend or a girlfriend or a son or a daughter than making space for other people's flaws and having fun? And that to me seemed like not saying I don't get along with Gen Z. They're too cool for me. Like, I'm not doing that. So I know it's convenient and it's human to classify others, but we should try to be better.
Come on, fucking asshole, move.
Who was that?
I think that was someone in a car.
Either that or talking to an account guy.
Yeah. Anyway, sorry to get all somber.
Well, this is Jessica from the Sideshow. I am so happy to have you guys here. Is there any questions that anybody wants to ask of these two in the last few minutes that we have left? I don't see it.
I'll ask one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
good.
Yeah, was there a point at which you started noticing the ageism creeping into your career?
I can answer from my point of view. I had gone to an agency called RGA, and the average age is probably 30. And it was very, very difficult to be there. First of all, I was their first TV guy. So most people claim that the medium I was working in was dead. No one on this phone call, including my wife, has seen me in skinny jeans, and I wasn't going to start. So it was really like, as a white man, I've not very often been in a situation where I'm the minority or I'm made to feel the minority. I know women feel it all the time. I know people of color feel it all the time. As a white man, I never felt it. I felt it there every day. And then you would start hearing things like, well, you're just riding it out. Or people would say, oh, Grandpa George is here. And it cuts. You can't complain about it because people don't get it. You put on a persona like Debra's two stories illustrate. You kind of you laugh to go along with it, because if you don't laugh, you can't take a joke. You lose. So yeah, that's when I started noticing it. So about 10 years ago for me, 15 years ago.
You know, I think I noticed it about like 7 or 8 years ago. I was in a meeting and we were discussing a stylist that we were discussing what stylist we might use for an upcoming shoot, and I suggested someone who was and is a really hot stylist and really fantastic, but two of the clients who were kind of on the junior side and younger, therefore as well, didn't know who she was, and they kind of had a sidebar that they didn't try to keep quiet, and one of them said to the other, "Do you know who that is?" And the other person said, "I think I've heard of her, but I think she's like really like old." And the fact that they said that and actually said it about someone I had recommended kind of meant I was old. And I luckily I knew that this stylist, I just kind of really knew that it was an ignorant comment, simply because she really was quite well regarded at the time. But yeah, it kind of hit me. I thought, holy moly, I mean, wow, they mean the stylist old, but they're also talking about me. And I was surprised, and I wasn't angry. I was hurt, which I know is quite the typical female reaction, but I was embarrassed and I was hurt. And I wondered if, it kind of made me realize maybe they talk about me when I'm not there. I don't know, that was mine.
I will say, like, I think there was a point for me where the most senior people in the agency went from being 5 to 10 years older than I to being 10 years younger than I. And it happened almost overnight, because the semiotics of agency life said you can't have a 60-year-old chief creative officer anymore. Mm-hmm. Those people really weren't wanted in the room. So almost overnight, those people got swapped out. I mean, and it left, I think, some of us feeling like the last man standing. Not that that person was an advocate for age or anything else, but it just showed kind of an institutional respect, or acceptance anyway, of experience. And then all of a sudden, the institution prized more the appearances of youth and vigor, not necessarily talent and accomplishment. That's obviously a biased point of view, but I feel like those of us from that agency we're not mentioning remember kind of when that happened.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you for that.
I have a question. Hey, it's Della. Hi, guys.
Hey, Della.
Hi.
I hear you hired a lot of people lately.
Trying to, George.
We know everything, We've got our fingers on the pulse.
I had a quick question though, because one of the comments that I hear a lot, I heard it when I was at Ogilvy, and I hear it a lot now, is the comment of, we need a grown-up on this, or where did the grown-ups go, or we need a grown-up in the room. And I just wanted to ask if you guys, I mean, for me, it's like, it's a, grown-up means experience, and at least in my book, and I feel like, do you guys see, do you feel like that narrative is coming up at all in any of the interactions that you guys have, or are you seeing like kind of the repercussions of kind of avoiding hiring older people, etc.? Do you know what I'm saying? Like, I hear it so much that it has become a thing.
It's an excellent question. I mean, from my personal experience is manifold around that word, because for many years, my landing page on my website said, my name in large type, and then it said copywriter, creative director, grown up. So on the advice of Chris Wall, I was selling myself as a grown up from maybe 2005 on. As an independent contractor now, I'm handling a different kind of problem that frankly, I don't think most agencies know how to handle anymore, that takes someone with a certain amount of patience or experience to be able to wrestle. And I mean, Della, you know, if my children were on the phone, I'd say you don't have to be old to be a grown-up. You just have to be able to see. I mean, I see one of the little squares smiling at me, and I know this woman from the time she's 24. She was always grown up. You know, and you know, so I think, and actually, I'm you know, I still talk to Steve Hayden a lot, and Rob Schwartz, who is one of his proteges, who's now CEO of Chiat Day, New York, told me a story about Lee Clow saying to Rob, "Oh, you have that thing Hayden has. You can see the whole picture." Because that to me is grown-upness or maturity or vision. And maybe it becomes aligned with age. But again, I don't think, if you go back, I know Christmas is coming, and so we're going to start seeing It's a Wonderful Life every 20 minutes. There's a line in there where George Bailey's father, Jimmy Stewart's father, says to him, "You were born old, George." And some people were born old. It doesn't mean they're chronologically old.
And I just to clarify my question, that was a very general question. I don't think that you have to be older to be a grown up. I think it's more of, you know, when you've seen a lot of decisions, you know, in hiring practices right now being made, opting for, you know, much less experienced talent, you know, maybe incorrectly, you know, I'm starting to see that there are repercussions from that, you know, and people may be reconsidering what type of experience some of the candidates have that are the opposite of, you know, just being youthful. I don't know if I'm making sense.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, I don't, you know, I always, at one point in my life, I was talking to a company, a pretty big company, about like a CMO job. And, you know, so all of a sudden, you know how you play that fantasy game and you start thinking about, what if I get it? I go, well, I wonder what agency I would hire. And, you know, it was always the agencies who knew how to handle multi-million-dollar accounts. And they tend to be big ones run by mature people who have experience not doing the local taco stand, but, you know, getting a stock price up, changing a place's perception in the market, not through one ad, but through through a 5-year plan, if you will. And that takes a certain long view that might be more associated with age, but it's more associated, I think, with maturity and a capacious ability to look at the world.
Yeah.
If I'm allowed to use the word capacious in advertising.
I think I'm gonna have to look that up.
Okay.
But yeah, thank you. I just, you know, definitely as I'm looking to bring people in, I mean, obviously I've got no age limit. I'm just trying to find the right person for the right job, you know? So
yeah.
Thank you guys for doing this. I think it's definitely a topic to have lots of discussions around.
Yeah, we can
Are we
go all
allowed to
night.
ask? Oh, I was going to say, were we allowed to ask one more question, or is it over?
I'm fine. You know, I'm fine. I mean, you know, my wife is used to me talking all night, so shoot.
I had a question. My question was around, like, when in all your lovely stories, though, I wanted to hear more of the times where you push back on the commentary, because that's the hardest thing to do, is to sort of take the joke that Debra does and that I do beautifully, I think, as well, and that so many of us do. We're like, oh, yes, I know, I'm 1,000. But like, what are the times where you think that you've stood up for these,
you know,
for all of us?
The dude thing, for me, I wrote before I got fired. I wrote in the November before the January I got fired, because I was doing well at Ogilvy. I mean, at that place. And I wrote a note that said I was angry, a blog post, and it was just called Angry. And I listed, I stole something from Bob Hoffman, the ad contrarian. who listed the Nobel Prize and Oscar winners of the previous years, and they were all over 50. And, you know, the allegation that I was somehow not employable because of my age, or I couldn't do fucking banner ads, is ridiculous. And, you know, you see it, it's usually, Hannah, more covert than overt, in that it's not people going up to you and going, hey, old timer, 23 skidoo, you know, it's not that. It's more like you see yourself not getting good assignments, or if there's a cool assignment in the house and there's not a ton of them, it's not going to you, or, you know, you're not invited out to be with certain, you know, clients and stuff like that. And you see it. And so it's hard in many ways. The sins are sins of omission rather than them calling you old timer. So those are harder to respond to. But you see in this particular case, I was asking to be heard by the CCO, and she wasn't responding. And you know what? I was too senior not to have been responded to. And it pissed me off. That's not the way you treat people. That's not treating people with respect. So I have a media channel, though. I have the George Network, so I can do things other people can't do. But that's how I push back. And, you know, Debra, I don't know about Jill, and I'm sorry if I'm doing all the talking. You know, when you're old in an agency, I mark down every little thing I see. I write it down and I put a date next to it. And so when I am fired and fighting for severance, I say, well, you know, Daniel called me grandpa 4 times, boom, 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 and boom. So don't tell me you don't have an ageist atmosphere here. And, you know, that saves you money. So, I mean, sometimes that's all you can do. I don't want to get in a fight with Daniel. I might kill him. You know, but I mean, I think that's what you have to do sometimes.
Yeah. And I think, Hannah, you know, I honestly, I think the point of a lot of what I said in my stories is that I haven't, you know, I've been gracious when grace probably wasn't called for. So that's something I'd like to learn how to do in a way that's, in a way that feels right for me.
Well, and sometimes that maybe a grace is what it is. So
when I was a boy, this is a true story. It's a little discursive, but I was on a baseball team with a guy I'm still friendly with. We're still best friends. And he happens to be African American. And he had hit a triple, or he was on first, and somebody hit a double, and he slid into third. I guess I was coaching third. And I said, slide, Freddie boy. And I called him boy. We were 14. You know, it's a different era. In 14, it was 1972. We weren't quite as aware as we are now. And he came up, and we were best friends. We're still best friends. And he came up from the slide and he said, what's that boy shit? And I never had that courage to say, what's that dude shit? I wish I did. You know, I also didn't have like the backing of kind of a sentiment that had changed or was changing along the way. But I didn't have the backbone to do that when I was in medias res. Maybe I do now. But it's certainly something I remember for 50 years. It made an impression on me. Because that was courageous.
sometimes you need life experiences though to teach you how to be courageous.
Well, yeah, it was pretty damn courageous. I mean, like I said, I didn't, you know, it happened literally. I was a ninth grader. That was a long time ago, and it's stuck with me. I can't imagine it in an office setting, someone going, watch that old lady shit. And, you know, you'd get called on the carpet for that because the weight of the sentiment hasn't shifted to your side yet. Just like in the Deep South in 1958, you'd be lynched for watch that boy shit. If I know that's kind of a complex concept, but I think it's clear.
Yeah, it is. Wow.
It's always good to end with a baseball story.
Thank you. It was great to see so many friends and
Yeah.
so many people I adore and some I don't know who I'm just so appreciate everybody coming.
Thank you
And
so much.
thanks for supporting the sideshow. My sides are great, by the way. I had French fries and broccoli.
George.
Well, thank you so much, George and Debra, for this session. It was amazing. And thank you so much for everybody who attended the session today. Have a great day.
Oh,
Thank you.
One thing, and I'll speak for myself. I won't speak for Debra. We can make these stories available, sideshow people, if people ask for them.
I would love that.
Yeah, we can work that out for sure.
Okay.
Thank
Take
you.
care.
guys.
Debra, thank you.
George, thank you.
Thank
Bye,
you.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.